Hello everyone! Welcome to my channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before starting the video, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button and give this video a like up. Bold and the Beautiful gave some controversial recasts on B&B that caused a huge ruckus. We're going to talk about 5 recasts in particular that fans didn't like and why they didn't like them. The very first recast that caused an uproar that I want to talk about was Annika Noel replacing Kim Matula as Hope Logan. If you don't remember, in 2014, Kim Matula left B&B, deciding not to renew her contract. She chose to leave. She left the role of Hope to pursue primetime work and movies, and then 4 years later, they recasted with Annika Noel. But for a lot of fans, they felt like they would only accept Kim Matula as Hope Logan. So there was this initial pushback and some snark on soap social media. You guys know how contentious that can get sometimes. Some people don't play nice and they attack the actors over stuff that happens with the characters, stuff that happens with the writers. So there was a whole big faction of fans that didn't want a recast and they wanted Kim Matula back as Hope. And it came down to the simple fact that Kim was a fan favorite, and her adoring fans were very vocal about their dissatisfaction, and some of them said some pretty mean things about her recast. That's what caused the controversy. Now, 7 years later, Annika Noel has herself earned a passionate and loyal following as Hope. Fans love Annika, but even to this day, some would still like Kim Matula back, even in another role. I doubt that the ex-Hope actress will ever be back, though, because Kim Matula stays busy in primetime and she gets movie roles, and she is just killing it out there, and I don't think she would backtrack to Bold. The number 2 recast I want to talk about that's so controversial was Taylor Hayes. Both recasts earned a lot of controversy. We know fans absolutely loved Hunter Tylo in the role. She was beautiful, she was a fan favorite with a passionate base of followers. But Hunter Tylo decided not to renew her contract back in 2013 for multiple reasons. She said in interviews that she was frustrated over Ron Moss and Thorne Forrester, Susan Flannery, go. That had her kind of down on staying at the show. Hunter also said she was tired of the repetitive writing and negative storylines, like the stuff with lady-on-lady violence and slapping and screaming. She also did not like fan divisiveness, and she didn't like the fact that personal attacks were aimed at her as a human being when people didn't like the character she was playing and her interactions with Brooke Logan, Catherine Kelly Lang. You know, we all need to be respectful online. First, Bold and the Beautiful recasted with Krista Allen, who also at first faced a lot of resistance as a recast, but over time she earned acceptance, and I think a lot of fans came to really appreciate her as Taylor. I thought she was great. And then, out of nowhere, Bold and the Beautiful fired Krista Allen. She was 2 years into a 3-year contract, and Bold and the Beautiful told her in October 2023 that they weren't keeping her. When there was all this speculation that she had been fired as Taylor, what was crazy to me was the soap came out and said, no, she's still on contract. Well, that's splitting hairs, because they said that, if I recall, in October, and technically that year of her contract ended in December. So, yes, technically she was still on contract, but at that point, according to the actress, they had already released her. So that wasn't really kosher communication, as far as I can see it. You can interpret it how you want. A couple of months later, Krista said in an interview that Bold and the Beautiful told her that Taylor wasn't really needed, and Krista said she felt like that was kind of crazy and didn't make sense. She only spoke out about it publicly after a ton of fans reached out to her on social media. Meanwhile, an insider from B&B then insisted they offered Krista to stay on a recurring basis, not a contract basis. But then Krista's rep clapped back and said she got an insultingly low offer of 3 lines in 1 episode and then months of nothing at all. Her last appearance as Taylor was November of 2023. 9 months later, suddenly Bold decided they did need Taylor, and they recasted with Rebecca Budig, who looks so young. She's, I think, 52, but she looks like half that age.
A lot of people have said on soap social media she looks more like Ridge Forrester's tiny daughter. You know, it was disconcerting for a lot of fans. I adore Rebecca Budig. She was great on General Hospital, she was fantastic as Greenlee on All My Children, and I think now fans are finally used to seeing her as Taylor, and they enjoy her vibe with Deacon Sharp. But many fans will always want Hunter Tylo back, but she left acting to focus on faith and family and her art. The third controversial recast to talk about is Thorsten Kaye, who replaced Ron Moss as Ridge Forrester. So Ron Moss decided not to renew his contract, and he revealed a while later that a big part of that decision was he and his wife were in this terrible car accident, like near-death car accident, and he had a head injury, and it affected his memory and his ability to retain dialogue. So he was struggling to play Ridge because he just couldn't memorize his lines. There were also some pay cuts that Ron said came through that made him feel taken for granted. Not just him, a lot of the actors, he said, were hit with them, despite the show having this big success. And in Ron's end, he said he wanted to pursue music and other projects, but fans were devastated. He left in September 2012, and by December of 2013, Thorsten Kaye had debuted in the role. He'd been on One Life to Live and All My Children. He's a good actor, let's be real. But the B&B fandom is passionate about their favorites, and they reject recasts. That's just a fact. And even now, many people still want Ron Moss back. Thorsten, for his part, said he doesn't see himself as a romantic leading man and thinks he's a lot less sexy than Ron. Very funny. You know, I think the larger issue with the Ridge swap for me is a writing change that has made the character much less likable than he once was. So, for me, it wasn't about the actors, but the writing change for the character. The fourth controversial recast I want to talk about was Ingo Rademacher replacing Windsor Harmon as Thorne. And of course, Windsor was another fan favorite that Bold and the Beautiful abruptly fired after 21 years on the show. His last regular episode as Thorne was October 2016, and he thought he was still on recurring and was waiting on a call to come back and do more episodes. In September 2017, he said he got another type of call from Brad Bell, who had abruptly decided to recast Ingo as Thorne instead. Windsor said Brad's move shocked him. For his part, Ingo said he had no idea that Windsor was still on recurring, he wasn't told that, and he said he had been hired to play another role for 10 to 12 episodes, but then, reportedly, Brad Bell pivoted and decided to recast Ingo as Thorne instead. Ingo said he hoped fans wouldn't hold it against him, and said Windsor was one of the nicest people he knows. Ingo's recast was short-lived. After a year playing Thorne, he decided not to renew his contract and went back over to GH. Then, in 2023, Bold had Windsor back, I think like for 1 or 2 episodes when Eric Forrester, John McCook, was supposedly dying, and we haven't seen him as Thorne since. The fifth and last recast I want to talk about that shook up fans was Matthew Atkinson taking over for Pearson Fode as Thomas Forrester. Matthew was gorgeous, very popular with B&B fans, but they also really hated the storyline where Thomas slept with Carolyn while she was drugged. Now, to be clear, Thomas didn't drug Carolyn, and he didn't know she had taken an anxiety pill before he showed up at her door. Then, when Bold recasted with Matthew Atkinson, also quite the hunk, they started writing Thomas as obsessed with Hope. That was a straight-up just rewrite, retcon of history. Thomas had only spent time with Hope now and then to distract her so that Stephanie Forrester, Jacqueline McInnes Wood, could go chasing Liam Spinter. So basically, Bold recasted and then abruptly changed Thomas into this psycho stalker fixated on Hope. So again, it's the rewrite of the character, more so than the swap of the actors. I think that was the issue. Matthew Atkinson is super talented. He's handsome, but he's been pushed into these awful storylines where Thomas does awful things. 100% not on the actor. I feel like in this case, like with the Ridge recast to some extent, it's about Brad Bell, head writer, and making major character changes to make them much less likable.